Okay, I see a few more people coming in. So if you can, I have the poll in the chat room. If you can select that, and then we'll get started in a little bit. I think we're still waiting for a few more people, so I'll just give it another minute or so. Oh, and in the meantime, if you can just make sure you hear me. If you can put like a thumbs up or something, just so we know it's working. Hmm. And then yeah, just make sure your audio and video are off just to for the streaming quality so that we don't have any like crazy interruptions or stuff like that. And then if you haven't already, um, if you want to, you can still download the Start Simple with MyPlate app. Um, this is what they'll be discussing today. So if you want it on your phone, you can kind of like follow along with them. They're going to discuss how to use it and then how we can like share it with participants. So if you want, it's called the Start Simple with MyPlate app if you haven't downloaded it yet. Thanks. Okay, so I think I'll start. I'll just go over the poll. So the question was, what do you think is the best cake? So I put a lot of random answers. So fish cake, ice cream cake, chocolate lava cake, cake noodle, and oat cake. So seems like you guys like ice cream cake. Okay, so today we're gonna have two presentations. So our first one, we have the staff from CNPP, which is the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion. First, we have Claire Brown from USDA Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion, Office of Nutrition Guidance and Analysis. Claire will be reviewing the 2020 to 2025 dietary guidelines for Americans. And then next, we also have Mary on the screen. She's from USDA FNS, Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion, Office of Nutrition Marketing and Communication. And then Mary will be discussing the MyPlate resources, the app that I mentioned that support the 2020-2025 dietary guidelines for Americans. Okay, so if you want, you can take it away, Claire.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll get my screen share ready to go. Hopefully that is working. Sandy just froze for me. Are y'all still there?
I can hear you. I don't see the screen though.
Okay, we'll give it just a second. My Teams is having a little bit of a hiccup.
Okay.
Let's try again. Sandy, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I saw your mouse a little bit, but
perfect. Now I think I'm back.
Go.
Okay,
yes. Yeah.
Good. The whole computer was frozen, so I got very nervous there for a second. But I think we're good to go. Just one more confirmation, Sandy, and we'll get rolling.
Yes, we can hear and see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you all so much for the invitation to join today's meeting. We really wish we were there in person. We don't often say that, but since we know you're all in Hawaii, we would love to be there. So please invite us back next year. But jokes aside, we do really welcome these opportunities to meet with you all nutrition professionals, to share about our work and to share tools that we hope are useful to you and to the participants that you all serve. Today, as Sandy mentioned, I'm going to start by sharing the dietary recommendations that are in the Dietary Guidelines for Americans and specific to the populations that you serve. I'll start with just a very brief background on how we go about developing the dietary guidelines, and then I'll dive into an overview of what those recommendations are. Then I'll turn it to Mary and she'll share about our MyPlate resources, and we'll end hopefully with plenty of time for questions and discussion. We really welcome that and invite your input and participation. Again, I'll spend the majority of our time together discussing those recommendations in the dietary guidelines, but before diving in, I just want to spend a brief minute discussing our process to develop those. And my goal in telling you this is really to assure you that the recommendations that I'll be speaking to today come about really as a result of a rigorous evidence-based process. The Dietary Guidelines for Americans are developed every 5 years, and it's a joint effort between USDA and our partners at the Department of Health and Human Services. Our process for development has 4 stages that take about 5 years to get through. First, we begin by identifying the questions and the topics that are of interest to the departments for the development of the guidelines. We select those questions in part based on the needs of federal programs like WIC, and then we invite stakeholders and the public to weigh in on those topics. During stage 2, we appoint a Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. This committee is comprised of nationally recognized experts who are nominated by the public and tasked with conducting an independent review of the scientific evidence and providing recommendations to the departments, to the government, for implementation and use in the dietary guidelines. The committee's work concludes when it submits its report to USDA and HHS. And then we, in stage 3, use that information to develop, to write and revise the dietary guidelines and release those to the public. And that process involves input from internal and external stakeholders, really across the federal government. Finally, stage 4 is implementation. That's the stage that we're in today for this 2020 to 2025 edition. And to implement the guidelines, we need stakeholders like you all to help us share the information, to communicate the information to consumers and to participants in your local WIC clinics. So we hope today's presentation will really make that possible. With this audience of folks interested in nutrition and working with the WIC program, the importance of a healthy diet is likely not a hard sell, or maybe not as hard as for some other audiences. However, let's just all take a minute and recognize how truly important it is and how the scientific evidence really supports that message. The science tells us that consuming a healthy dietary pattern has so many benefits. And the science also supports the idea that at every life stage provides an opportunity to make food choices that promote health and well-being, can help achieve and maintain a healthy weight, and can reduce risk of diet-related chronic disease. That notion is really part of what inspired our call to action for this edition of the Dietary Guidelines, which is to make every bite count, from infancy through older adulthood. The concept of make every bite count translates to the theme and the organizational structure of this edition of the Dietary Guidelines, which takes a life course approach. In Chapter 1, we have foundational guidance that applies across the life stages. And then in subsequent chapters, we have tailored guidance specific to the life stages that may be most of interest to whoever you work with. And so for this audience, I'm going to be focusing on the guidance for infants and toddlers, women who are pregnant or lactating, as well as part of Chapter 3, which is children and adolescents. And so this user-friendly approach means that you can use the information that is most applicable to the populations that you work with, much of which I'll cover in today's presentation. That foundational guidance in Chapter 1 that I mentioned is centered on 4 overarching guidelines that are contained in this new edition. Briefly, these guidelines are to 1, follow a healthy dietary pattern at every life stage. 2, customize and enjoy nutrient-dense food and beverage choices to reflect personal preferences, cultural traditions, and budgetary considerations. 3, to focus on meeting food group needs with nutrient-dense foods and beverages and to stay within calorie limits. And 4, to limit foods and beverages higher in added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium, and to limit alcoholic beverages. The guidelines aim to communicate the importance of making nutrient-dense choices, and that can be done one food or beverage at a time. The message here, and that's displayed in this graphic, is that small changes in single choices can add up and make a big difference. The graphic I'm showing here is just one of several tools that we have that can help communicate this message. This graphic displays typical choices and the nutrient-dense alternative that can help someone adopt a healthy dietary pattern. So for example, instead of choosing frosted shredded wheat, choosing the nutrient-dense plain shredded wheat option. This idea of a healthy dietary pattern that's adopted by shifting to nutrient-dense foods and beverages from more typical choices is even more important when you consider that for individuals 2 and older, about 85% of their daily calories are needed just to meet food group recommendations with nutrient-dense healthy choices. After that, it's only about 15% remaining for other uses, and that those other uses could include those typical choices that I showed on the earlier slide, and that contain added sugars and or saturated fat. But when you think about it this way, the message is there's really not a lot of room. And so it really highlights the importance of those nutrient-dense choices. But we also know, and we communicate in Chapter 1 and throughout the guidelines, that a healthy dietary pattern does not look the same for all individuals. It's a framework, and like any framework, it's intended to be customized. We could never develop a one-size-fits-all prescription for a healthy dietary pattern, given the diversity of cultures in the United States. And so we designed this framework, and then we hope nutrition professionals like you all will help individuals customize that based on their preferences and culture and budget. Now, to assist in that, we've developed resources, including a handout, part of which is shown here, that lists the example foods within each of the food groups that's part of a healthy dietary pattern. We're also always looking to expand our resources and ways to communicate this message about customization. And so we welcome your suggestions and ideas for how we can go about doing that at the end of today's presentation. Now that's Chapter 1, the foundational guidance, overarching messages. Now let's dive into the discussion on the content that's most applicable to the populations that you work with in the WIC program, beginning with infants and toddlers. Recommendations for infants and toddlers are presented in Chapter 2, for birth through 24 months. And these recommendations are really focused on the premise that that time from birth until a child's second birthday is a critically important period for proper growth and development, and also for establishing healthy dietary patterns that ideally continue throughout the life course. Now, the key recommendations are shown on this slide, and I'm going to walk through those in the next series of slides in a little more detail. For the first 6 months of an infant's life, human milk feeding alone is the ideal form of nutrition. Human milk provides the necessary nutrients, protective factors against disease, and other unique immunological benefits. The guidelines specify that if human milk is unavailable, that in those cases, the infant should be fed an iron-fortified commercial infant formula, one that's regulated by the FDA and not provided with homemade or imported formulas that don't go about that rigorous review by the Food and Drug Administration. In the guidelines in Chapter 2, you'll also find guidance for the safe expression and handling of human milk, as well as a note of caution around the obtainment of donor human milk. Now, continuing on and thinking about the recommendations in Chapter 2, birth to 24 months for supplementation, this chapter really recognizes that even when a varied diet is consumed, achieving adequate vitamin D from foods and beverages alone is challenging. And so for this recommendation, and so for this reason, the recommendation is for infants fed exclusively human milk to begin vitamin D supplementation soon after birth, and then potentially to continue that supplementation beyond the first year of life, depending on what the diet looks like and based on a discussion with a healthcare provider. Consuming adequate iron is also vitally important during this life stage, and that's why in a few slides when we talked about the introduction of complementary foods, iron-rich food sources are recommended. But in some cases, supplemental iron needs should also be discussed with a healthcare provider. Thinking about kind of the second half of the infant's first year, once an infant is developmentally ready, then we think about foods and beverages that should be introduced to complement that human milk feeding. And these complementary foods and beverages are really essential to help that infant meet their nutrient needs beginning at about 6 months of age. And so because of that, it's really important to select those complementary foods carefully to help them meet their needs. The introduction of these complementary foods really begins when the infant has developed the gross motor, oral, and fine motor skills necessary to eat those complementary foods. And then as the oral skills develop, the thickness and the texture of the foods can gradually be varied. And in thinking about the introduction of complementary foods, you also can think about when is the best time to introduce those potentially allergenic foods during this life stage. So that would include peanuts, egg, cow's milk product, tree nuts, wheat, crustacean shellfish, fish, and soy. And the guidance here regarding the introduction of potentially allergenic foods is there's really no evidence that delaying the introduction of allergenic foods beyond when other complementary foods are introduced helps to prevent food allergy. So it's recommended to introduce those right alongside those other complementary foods. Now, in the case where an infant is higher risk, such as an infant has severe eczema, an egg allergy, or both, and so is higher risk for peanut allergy, in these cases, age-appropriate peanut-containing foods should be introduced into the diet as early as age 4 to 6 months. That has shown to reduce the risk of developing a peanut allergy. But in these cases, we do recommend that caregivers check with the infant's healthcare provider to discuss the best mode and timing for that introduction of that peanut-containing food. With the goal of having you walk away with a variety of resources and information to aid you in your work, we want to highlight this resource that's developed not by USDA or HHS, but by CDC, so our sister department, that may be useful to parents and caregivers. It's a milestone tracker to help understand when a child may be ready for the introduction of solid foods. So Mary will highlight even more tools related to this concept later in the presentation, but this is one we hope you'll walk away with and might be useful to you in your work. Now, as complementary foods are introduced, this also brings up the topic of beverages. And in Chapter 2, the recommendations here are that in the first year of life, small amounts of plain fluoridated water can be given with the introduction of complementary foods, but no other beverages are necessary before age 12 months. And that would include beverages advertised as toddler milks. Those are really not necessary in the infant or toddler diet, and often they contain added sugars. During this life stage, thinking about the importance of a nutrient-dense diet, it's also important to limit certain foods, those foods with added sugars, sodium, and also to avoid honey and unpasteurized foods that may contain pathogens. Now, specific to the recommendation for added sugars, during this life stage, the recommendation is to avoid added sugars. And that recommendation comes from a recognition that infants and young children have virtually no room in their diet for added sugars. That's because their nutrient requirements are quite high relative to their size and the amount of food that they consume. And so it's even more important to really make sure that the foods introduced are nutrient dense without really any wiggle room for those foods containing added sugars. Those complementary foods should be nutrient dense and again, not contain those additional calories from added sugars, as well thinking about low and no calorie sweeteners, sometimes called high intensity sweeteners. Those are not recommended for children younger than age 2. And that's because taste preferences are really being formed during this time period. And so the introduction of those high intensity sweeteners may cause, have a preference for overly sweet foods. Continuing on, thinking, past the introduction of complementary foods to the toddler life stage, that's really about eating a variety of foods, flavors, and textures with the goal of that toddler transitioning to the healthy family diet by age 2. Now, within Chapter 2, you'll find a framework for a healthy dietary pattern in the second year of life. That's shown here on this slide. You can squint at it, but it's available for download in the dietary guidelines themselves. This is the healthy US-style dietary pattern for children ages 12 through 23 months. It provides the amounts of foods and subgroups to consume at the calorie levels most appropriate for this age group. Now, our goal is to have infants adopt a healthy dietary pattern, but even at this young age, there's some work to be done in that regard, and that's what we see here in this data. Even at this young age, we see that the second year of life doing pretty good on total fruit, total grains, and dairy. But even at this young age, total vegetables are below recommended levels, as well as total protein foods. We also see that despite a recommendation to avoid added sugars, about 100 calories per day on average is coming from those sources. And so these data start to highlight the importance of your work and the importance of helping families and caregivers of those children, those youngest life stage, really think about adopting a healthy dietary pattern that ideally continues on into the later life stages. And those later life stages are going to be another population that WIC serves, children ages 2 through 5. For today's presentation, I've really focused it on the content for the younger kiddos within the child and adolescent age group. And all of this is contained within Chapter 3, which also does include guidance for adolescents. With this age group, the 2 through 5 age group, I really like to highlight this data, particularly when I'm speaking with WIC audiences, because it just highlights how important it is, what important work you all are doing in implementing and carrying out the WIC program. Because what we see here is kind of how well children and adolescents are doing in terms of achieving a healthy dietary pattern. We can measure that with our Healthy Eating Index score. It's kind of an overall measure of how well someone's doing. The maximum score is 100. So as you can see, our WIC population, ages 2 through 4, have higher scores than other age groups. It really starts to decline after age 5 and kind of dips to its lowest level in adolescence. But these scores are far from perfect. If they're out of 100, 60 out of 100, we have a ways to go. Ideally, we would want to see those scores much higher and then continue or only improve throughout the life course. And so we'll need your help in order to do that, and just really highlights the importance of nutrition education for the WIC child population. Now, why are those scores, 60 out of 100 for this age group? We can look to the consumption data to really tell that story. And that's what I'm showing on this slide. We see that among children ages 2 through 4, consumption of total fruit is generally pretty adequate for about 60% of children. As well, compared to other age groups, a higher percentage of young children have intakes of vegetables that are at or above the recommended levels. As children kind of age and transition beyond 2 through 4, the difference between recommended and actual intakes really emerges and expands as children age. So that's where the scores start to go down. With dairy, the amount of dairy food children are consuming is really stable, kind of across childhood and adolescence. For young children, that means that they're consuming dairy pretty close to the recommended intake levels. However, by age 9, the recommended amount of dairy increases and intakes did not. So then we start to see a gap that remains throughout adolescent years that is concerning when we think about the important nutrients that are provided through that food group. Thinking about our other food groups, grains and protein, with grains, these kiddos are doing well on total intake, but the balance between refined and whole grain sources is not optimal. We see an underconsumption of whole grain and an overconsumption of refined. And with protein foods are generally not a concern, but we do see that within the protein foods groups, seafood is below recommended intake ranges, so an area for improvement. Generally with this age group, the majority are also over-consuming added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium. So those data I presented really, again, highlight how important this work is, and even more so when you consider that those suboptimal intake patterns can really contribute to risk of chronic disease later in life. So really, again, highlights the importance of a healthy dietary pattern and special considerations for this life stage, which we see as an increasing intake of sugar-sweetened beverages and contributing to those added sugars, as well as a declining intake of dairy. And I'm going to skip it along so we have plenty of time for discussion, but I do want to touch briefly on the final population that WIC serves and discuss the unique nutritional needs of women during the life stages of pregnancy and lactation. Now, during these life stages, just as described in Chapter 1 with the core elements of a healthy dietary pattern, those are largely consistent. But we do know that women have increased calorie and nutrient needs during these life stages. And so that's where our special considerations come out in this Chapter 5 for pregnancy and lactation. And there are a number of special considerations discussed, which I'll highlight today. First is thinking about nutrient needs during these life stages. A premise of the dietary guidelines is that you meet your nutrient needs through foods and beverages. But during pregnancy and lactation, that's not always possible. So most healthcare providers and most women will take a prenatal vitamin and mineral supplement to complement that healthy dietary pattern. And with that, thinking about those supplements, it's important to recognize the difference between the needs of women who are pregnant and those who are lactating. And what we see in the data is that often women who are lactating may continue to use those prenatal supplements, and that may actually cause them to exceed their needs for folic acid and iron. And so in Chapter 5, you'll see a discussion around that. And it's really important to kind of have that conversation with women and seek guidance on appropriate use of those dietary supplements, specifically during lactation. Thinking to the other nutrient needs that are so important during this life stage, Adequate folate and folic acid is so important prior to conception and during the first trimester to prevent neural tube defects. And the dietary guidelines carry forward a recommendation from the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force in regard to folic acid supplementation during these life stages. Iron is another key nutrient during pregnancy that supports fetal development. And about 1 in 10 women who are pregnant and are iron deficient, and about 1 in 4 during their third trimester. So it really highlights the importance of thinking about nutrient needs and getting those nutrient-dense foods as well. Finally, with nutrients, iodine and choline are 2 important nutrients to just be aware of in the diet of women who are pregnant and also lactating. Adequate iodine is particularly important for neurocognitive development of the fetus. And while iodine intake is generally not a concern, if a woman does not consume dairy, eggs, seafood, or use iodized salt, it could be that she is not consuming enough iodine to meet those needs. So important to have that conversation about what the diet looks like. And then with choline, again, a nutrient that ideally is met through foods and beverages, but if there is concern about meeting that recommendation, it's important to talk about appropriate choline supplementation and whether that's recommended. Thinking beyond nutrients for this life stage to foods, the final special considerations of this chapter are around seafood, recommending that women who are pregnant consume at least 8 and up to 12 ounces of seafood that's lower in methyl mercury, and to finally avoid alcoholic beverages, to not drink during pregnancy, and also that not drinking alcohol is the safest choice during lactation. I'm going to just highlight this very briefly to know that women during this life stage are doing better than the average women of childbearing age who are not pregnant. They're about 8 points higher in their healthy eating index scores, but we would still give them a grade of a D if we were to rate them in school. So it highlights that women really are motivated to eat healthfully during these life stages, but they need the support and guidance of nutritional professionals like you all, hopefully to help them achieve that. So with that, that was a whirlwind kind of through the Dietary Guidelines 2020 to 2025 edition. I highlighted the foundational guidance in chapter 1, really, took you on a whirlwind adventure of the chapters that pertain to your WIC populations. And I would just end by encouraging you to visit our website, dietaryguidelines.gov, to download a copy and dive into that content that I spoke to today, as well as to download a lot of our online supporting materials, including print resources, graphics, etc., that are really designed for professionals like you all to use in your everyday work. So that's the dietary guidelines side. And now, Mary, I'm going to turn it to you to tell us about the consumer resources available through MyPlate to support implementation.
Sounds great. Thank you, Claire. I'm going to attempt to share my slides and hope for the best here. Seem to be having the same issue. Oh, maybe we're going to get something.
Just be patient, Mary.
There you
I
go.
can see the slides and hear you.
Oh, I don't see them yet.
Oh, okay.
There we go. And do you just see one slide or do you see the
We see
slide?
the first slide, the My Plate resources. I guess the title slide.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, so I'm Mary Harrop, and again, thank you for having us. This is always a great opportunity. Today, I'm going to talk about the MyPlate resources that support the dietary guidelines for Americans that Claire just presented on. So just as an overarching look on this, so the dietary guidelines for Americans are basically the call to action, what we call the what. And then MyPlate and the tools around MyPlate, we consider that the how. So how to implement what we're hearing from the dietary guidelines for Americans. And right now we have a campaign of our Start Simple with MyPlate, and that provides inspiration and ideas for people to incorporate into their busy lives. So we have several key MyPlate tools and resources. I'll hit on a few that we talked about today, but just in general, we have the myplate.gov website, of course. We have a new MyPlate quiz that we'll talk a little bit about. We have the personalized MyPlate plans that are available on the website. We have toolkits for partners and professionals. And then we'll spend most of our time talking about the Start Simple with MyPlate app that I do hope that you all had the opportunity to download. So let's jump right into the app. The Start Simple with MyPlate app is available currently, as you know, for Apple on the App Store and Android on Google Play. And so it's available to download if you have already or if you'd like to in the future. So what is the Start Simple app? As a general overview, the app is actually a goal setting tool. It is designed to meet consumers where they are with a variety of goals in the food groups. It's very customizable. You can choose the food group that you want and the specific goal that might meet what you think you can achieve. And then each goal has 3 corresponding how-to tips that go along to provide ideas for implementing the goal. The key features of the app are, of course, to pick the goals. These are daily goals that you can pick. And then they're very, let's say, doable in that it could be as broad as snack on vegetables or start your day with dairy. You can also see your real-time progress. As you see here, there's a goals dashboard with the numbers with the rings around it. This is where you're going to see how you're doing throughout the day. And of course, you have to have some fun, so there you can earn badges to celebrate the success as you move across completing goals. And we also encourage our users to join our challenges when they're available. That's an opportunity to try a new goal and always just stay motivated. And with the dietary guidelines, we released a few new features in the app. That is to create what's called an eAuth account. That's really a username and password to save your information. And you can favorite the food group tips. There are quite a few, so you might have some that you want to come back and take a look at. And the new MyPlate quiz syncs with the app, and you can use that to set goals within the app. So let's take a look. So the first screens here, I just wanted to walk you through using the app if you've had an opportunity to use it or if you're just new to it. As I mentioned, the goals dashboard is really the main page of the app. So here you see that this person has not set any goals yet, and you just see the list of the food groups. From here, you can review this is clicking on the fruits food group. And here you can review the 7 goals that are available and then choose the goals that you feel you could do within each day. And you see the green marker shows that those have been selected. The next screen shows picking goals, just showing the vegetable food group here. Again, you'll see the 7 goals to choose from and the goals that are available to select. In this case, it was add a vegetable to your lunch, start your day with a vegetable, and have a vegetable with dinner. So as this person moved through setting the goals, you see here the goals dashboard changes a little bit to reflect what they've done. So they have 3 goals set in fruit, 3 in vegetable, 1 in grains, 2 in protein foods, and 1 in the dairy food group. So as this person has moved around about their day, they are starting to complete their goals. So in this case, they've added a vegetable to their lunch. They started their day with dairy, and you can see they were just checking off those as they went about. This is a good vision of the how-to tips. Next to each goal, there is this yellow light bulb icon. By clicking on that, you're brought to a screen that you can scroll through a series of 3 tips for each goal. In this case, have a vegetable with dinner. So from here, you can see some ideas on how to implement that goal. And this is a good view of the goals dashboard as this person has continued to meet their goals. They've completed their fruit goals, almost there with vegetables, none of their grains yet, about half their protein foods, and all their dairy food goals have been met. So that's the way to keep track throughout the day. And of course, as I mentioned, you can earn badges along the way. There's always the first goal completed badge. So if you've had the opportunity to download the app and you meet a goal, you're going to be rewarded with this badge right away. Any badges that you earn will be available on that bottom navigation under the badges icon. Here you see the goals badges at one tab, and then the challenge badges, that's a little light there, in another. So this person earned the first goal complete badge. And by looking at this page, you can see all the other badges that are available. And then we have to talk about the My Plate badge because that can be earned by meeting one goal, at least one goal in each food group for one day. Another really informative area of the app that's available also from the bottom navigation is My Plate 101. This area is very popular and people find it very helpful. It provides an overview of My Plate as well as you see on the second screen here, these areas of each of the food group, fruits, vegetables, grains, protein foods, and dairy. These are all expandable. So under there, you'll get the recommendation for the food group, as well as what counts as a cup or ounce equivalent in that food group. We also have recently linked to get your My Plate plan. So if you would like to know exactly what your targets should be in the food groups so that when setting your goals, you can do it to meet your targets, you would click on the Get Your My Plate plan here, right in the app, and you enter some information and you get your specific plan. And as I mentioned, we do offer in-app challenges. We will offer them under the challenges icon in the app. Right now, the challenge is to take the My Plate quiz from the website. And if you sync it with the app, you will earn the My Plate quiz badge. And we are going to talk a little bit more about that. So onto the My Plate quiz. As I mentioned, this is on the myplate.gov website. It has been very popular. And it is an interactive tool for consumers to see how they're doing with their diet, how as sort of a self-assessment of their diet. It's about 20 questions. It's very quick to go through, and it's about the healthy eating behaviors as well as any eating interests. And it is designed to be quick and simple and connect with our My Plate resources. So what does that mean? So when the quiz is completed, each user gets a personalized results page. And so here is a small look at that. At the top, the results page will show how the user did with the food groups based on their answers. And then we talk about resources and tools that might be of help. So in this case, this is the Start Simple with My Plate app that we're going to talk about how to do this, how these connect, as well as the My Plate plan to get your individual food group targets. And then this is a little small to see, but it's links to the My Plate kitchen resource for recipes within the food groups that may have been indicated that the person needs a little bit of help in. Additional resources down here are very popular tip sheets, and these will show based on the same areas that either the person showed interest in or might have needed a little help on. So this is a close-up to start showing how we can use the My Plate quiz results to mesh up with the app and setting goals. So this is a close-up on that top area of the quiz results. And on this person taking the quiz, you can see they did great on fruits and protein foods. They needed a little bit of help in vegetables, grains, and dairy. So that's great. And we see here they get the 6-digit code here at the bottom. So what do we do with that? Well, this is a outline of what you would do in your app. When you get the 6-digit code from your quiz, you enter the app and enter that 6-digit code, and then you're going to be prompted to either set your goals in the app based on what your quiz results were, those food groups that needed a little help, or you're always welcome to keep your current goals if you're happy where you are. You can also use a QR code and just hold it up to your camera on your phone, and that will automatically open your app as well. So if you were to have come from the quiz and for whatever reason didn't enter the code right away, you can always go to the main menu of the app. That's that little 3-line white line in the upper left-hand corner. And you see here, sync my plate quiz results. You'll enter the code. This person's code has been entered here on the slide. That you'll get a confirmation that the code's entered. And here is that prompt. Do you want to like set your goals from your results, or do you want to pick your own? And for the purposes here, we're going to show that we are going to set them from the results. And here you go. You see that one goal was automatically set in each of the food groups that were needing a little help based on the quiz. So one in vegetables, one in grains, and one in dairy. And it is good to note here that while these are all daily goals for each day, your goals will automatically reset Monday at something like 12 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, so that you can start the week fresh. But you'll get prompted to keep them as they were, or you can set new ones anytime. The other item here, since we're talking about saving things, is that it's somewhat new to the app that you can now create an account. And that's important to, in case you lost your device, you would lose your fun badges and your progress. Or if you wanted to switch to a different device, you can log in with a username and password. To do that, again, we're going to the main menu in the upper left-hand corner. We're going to get prompted right at the top for login or register. And at that point, when you click that, you'll go to sort of a USDA page, and that is to create what's called an eAuth account. And as I mentioned, eAuth is just USDA's way of assigning usernames and passwords. What we do all the time on different apps and websites, it's just a USDA sort of centralized location for that. And we also added this new feature to save favorite food group tips. So we talked about the yellow light bulb does bring you to these tips to scroll through, and you'll just see a little heart at the bottom of each tip if that was something that resonated or you think you might want to look at again. Just heart that, and that will be saved in your main menu. Or, of course, feel free to share it if you think somebody else would benefit from it or you just want to send it to social media. And so here we see where to find your favorite tips once they've been saved. Still under that main menu, you'll hit favorite tips this time, and you'll see the food groups and if you how many tips you have saved underneath there. In this case, we're looking at vegetables and that there are 4 tips saved under here. So they're quite easy to find. And of course, we must mention that this app does sync with a smartwatch. It doesn't have the full features on a watch, but it does have the ability to mark off your goals as you go through the day. And of course, see your goals. So that would be if you're on the go and you meet a goal, that way you can just mark it right off on your watch. So that is the end of the Start Simple with My Plate app. But we did want to take this opportunity to talk to you about a fun new tool that we have out that we think will be of great interest to you all as the WIC program. And it is our brand new Alexa skill. And this is for parents and caregivers of babies and toddlers. And it is a free resource for through the Amazon Alexa app and devices. So let's take a little closer look at that. Excuse me. So again, this is nutrition and information for parents and caregivers on what to feed babies and toddlers based on their age. So that would be 4 to 24 months. And it is based on the dietary guidelines, of course. And we have big plans to keep expanding these skills, as they're called, through Amazon beyond the 2 years. So how do you get it? So of course you can say right into, if you happen to have an Amazon device, right into it, you just simply say, Alexa, enable the MyPlate skill, and that will put the skill directly on your device. You don't have to do anything else. And at that, or go to Amazon.com and you can download this right on your phone. So you don't need one of the Amazon or the Alexa devices. And once you have this device on either your phone or the Alexa, that will prompt you to tell the age of your child or your baby. And from there you can say, I think it is, give me a tip, or do you want a tip? And you can get tips covering such a wide variety of feeding information for infants and toddlers. So this is very exciting. And with your target audiences and your participants, you may want to spread the word about this Alexa or post things in your offices. And here we see a variety of the graphics that we have available on the MyPlate website. And of course, we would welcome any requests for anything else. So that is a few of our resources in a nutshell, I guess. And we really just appreciate the opportunity to tell you about them. And we welcome any questions in the time we have left. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary and Claire. Yeah, so if any of you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself right now. But yeah, thanks to CNPP. It was great to see like the DGAs have been expanded to new demographics like infants and pregnant and lactating women, which is like really relevant to our WIC population. And then the app is definitely something our participants would enjoy just because it's like fun like a game. So that's awesome too. But yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, and then they can answer it for you. Okay, looks like Laura has another question. So could you mention the MyPlate calorie counter app? Okay, so if you can, put it in the chat box.
I see here, could you mention the MyPlate calorie counter app? My feeling might be that that's referring to Super Tracker, which unfortunately is no longer on our website or available. If that isn't the correct app that you're referring to, then I'm happy to address any other questions. But we do miss Super Tracker, but that's where have room for these other tools that we've been working on. So we're excited about that. But if that's not the correct Oh, I just noticed it in my app store.
Uh-oh, Mary, we're gonna have to investigate that.
Yes, that's a good point, Claire. So I think oftentimes my plate is, of course, a government and public domain. So oftentimes um, other people are absolutely okay to use the My Plate and develop their tools around it. So I have a feeling that is probably what you're referring to, and it's probably just not a USDA tool. But I'll check it out, as Claire says. We'll look into it.
And then Mary, I don't know if you can see the chat, but we have a question about if we know anything about who's using the app, age and ethnicities, and then languages the app is available in.
Great questions. We don't really get that granular with our metrics. We do have the ability to see app downloads and get aggregate information, but we don't have we're not collecting anything on ethnicities or actually the demographics of the audiences. I can certainly look into our ability to do that. It would be interesting information for sure, but that is not entered into the app. There's no information that would have anyone enter their age or ethnicity, so it probably would be difficult to glean that. But it's definitely would be interesting. I would agree with that. And the languages right now, um, it is only available in English, and we would love that to be available in more languages in the future. States or cities using the app? Again, we don't have that information because the person doesn't need to enter that. They really can just get started with a username and password and really don't even need that. So we aren't really able to.
We have heard that we've done other WIC presentations, and we know at least Maryland WIC, the state of Maryland, has been recommending this to their audiences. So hopefully we have a Maryland pocket and a Hawaii pocket soon, even if we're not collecting the data.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Okay, yes, it's from the livestrong.com. Yeah.
For the app to be with the Workshopper app, I'll follow up with Lynn on that as well.
That would be cool.
And then I'm not too sure if Lisa has a question. The hand is up, so just wondering if you can type your question, if you do, in the chat box. Okay, I think her hand went away. But yeah, thank you to Mary and Claire for presenting about the DGAs. You can put more questions in the chat box if you want. If you have any questions, I'll send the email to them if you follow up any email or any questions. But yeah, thank you for sharing. So after this, I'll be sharing a short video, and then it's titled The Little Things. It talks about let's see, it's like showing how the effects of doing one small thing every day can really make a big impact on yourself and others. This video can connect like both presentations that we have today, because it shows that every little effort that we make can be more inclusive and supportive of our participants, and it really does show a positive impact in their lives. So I'll be putting that on in a little bit. So feel free to put questions in the chat box if you think of anything while I put the video on.
Well, Sandy, thank you so much again for having us and reaching out. And we have enjoyed our time. We can either stick around, or depending on our meeting schedule, we may have to log off. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, feel free to stay around if you want to. But yeah, thank you so much for presenting.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks all.
you can hear the shopping cart coming down the sidewalk. My wife will say, Bobby, here come Herman. You know, the amazing thing is how he load that shopping cart up and push it up that hill.
I got it all down pat.
But you always do it with a smile. I sometimes sit back and watch you, and I seen the way that you handle yourself with the residents. They know they treated with respect when they see you coming. And there are people in other complex that been trying to steal Herman for years to pay him to come and deliver their food for 'em.
Oh, yeah.
We know, but we're a close-knit bunch. You know, it's the little thing that you do day in and day out that I admired for the last 8 years. I don't think that you can find a better person to be friend with.
Thank you. I'm doing something that people really need, and that made me feel really good. So long as I got breath in my body, I'm gonna continue doing it. I sleep good at night.
Sorry, I was muted. So if you want, you can put your comments in the chat box. But feel free to take a break until like 9:40, and then we'll come back 9:40, and then I'll launch a poll, and then we'll have our second presenter. Okay? Thank you. Hello, everyone. Okay, so I'm gonna just start. I'm gonna launch a poll. So if you can take a look, it'll be in your chat box. So the question is, how important are family recipes to you? And then the answers are either very important, somewhat important, neutral, somewhat not important, or not so important. So if you can, we'll take a few minutes just to answer this. If you're just coming back, I put a poll in the chat box, so if you can take a look, it's just asking how important are family recipes to you, and then you can put your answer in. I'll just wait a little bit longer. I know there's a few more of you. That's okay. Um, but yeah, I guess I'll go through the results. So how important are family recipes to you? A majority of you guys said very important, somewhat important, neutral. So I guess there is an impact that recipes do make on us. Um, I guess for me, it's if I cook it or not, but that's a different story. But yeah, I think they're really important just because they can be passed down, taste really good. So good to know that recipes are being passed down. So today, our next presenter is Sharon Kaiulani Odom. Um, she'll be discussing Kokua Kalihi Valley's framework and approach to maintain food security and provide continued support to the community. So she'll discuss her presentation and just wanted to share her bio. So Sharon Kaiulani Odom is a registered dietitian and health educator and a Native Hawaiian cultural practitioner. Kaiulani has developed, managed, and published and presented on culturally based nutrition and health programs for over 20 years. She has worked with KKV since Roots establishment in 2011 and oversees program operations including the Food Hub and Community Gardens. Kaiulani participated in creating Pili Naha framework. So if you can take it away. But yeah, please feel free to share your screen.
Okay, there we go. Aloha, everybody. Mahalo for the introduction. I'm Ke'olani Odom. I work for the Roots program at Kokua Kalihi Valley, and this is actually the motto of Kokua Kalihi Valley, our overall organization. Together, we work towards healing, reconciliation, and the alleviation of suffering in Kalihi Valley by serving communities, families, and individuals through strong relationships that honor culture and foster health and harmony. So we take this seriously. We work in a valley that's multicultural. Our staff is multicultural. We have a lot of background and influences. Oh, did the presentation go away?
No, we can still see.
Oh, I just see circles on my screen. I can't even, let's see, maybe.
It might be hidden at the, if you want to check your icons on the bottom, there might be a window that's behind it or something.
Let's see, I saw it for a second. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
Okay. Are you seeing like the whole thing or?
Yeah, so just your slides, none of your screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm seeing something different. Anyway, Kokua Kalihi Valley started in about 45 years ago, and we really actually started with one container that our staff went out into the community to find out what the community needed, and they needed a health clinic. And this continues today, that we really are interested in what the community needs. And we have staff that go out into the community, that are always talking to the community to work with the community. And so as I'm talking about the Roots program, I want to talk a little bit about the framework. So that's overall KKV, and that's the framework. But when we were, after about 4 or 5 years of working here, what was happening, and we're fully grant funded, all of our programs are grant funded, but what was happening was that we were continuously having to report on goals that were set by somebody else. And so we were reporting on goals, for the federal government, for this government, and they weren't always matching what our community thought was important. So we decided to try and figure out, when we're looking at an Indigenous health framework, what is important to us? And so we would we brought people over, we fed them, we had them work on the land, we went to other places, and we really had people start off with telling a story about feeling healthy and well. So if I were to ask each of you to take just 1 minute, and the first story that comes to your mind about when you were feeling really healthy and really good about yourself, what would the story be? So just take a minute to think about that. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what we found. In searching for these measures of Indigenous measures of health, and having conversations and gatherings, and people that all that we could think of to come to our table, what we found out was that our stories were our indicators, and we needed to really look at that. And the practices that were in their stories were really about treatments of getting people healthy and well. And so, let's see. There we go. And so what we heard when we were talking about this, is that a lot of times in medical fields and medical systems, that the existing framework is really about people's bodies breaking down and what's wrong with you. And what we really want to focus on are what are the things that make you whole, and that it's not just about one person, that it's about a family, a community. In fact, here at KKV, our community is really our smallest measure of health. It's not just the individual. A lot of times medical systems make it very exclusive, and we want it to be inclusive of the family, inclusive of the community, inclusive of the culture, inclusive of your connection to land. What are all of these things that help you to be whole? And it's not about a weakness or failure in your body. It's about the resilience. It's about what we can do to continue to build up health and to make ourselves stronger in body, mind, and spirit. And it's not just about one single test that defines who you are. It's about your life journey and all that you've known from your kupuna and all that you're going to pass on forward to your grandchildren that you never see. That's what your health is about. It's not just one simple test in time, and it shouldn't be defined by somebody else. Your health should not be defined by some outside provider. Your health should be defined by yourself. And then we want to make sure that all of the thing when we're talking about health, that it's relatable, that we are making sure people understand that they can feel and know what we're talking about, and so that they have the power to be resilient, to help to make the changes themselves. And so what we found, and I'm going to go through this really fast, but we found that the 4 connections that came up through all of the stories were connection to place. You wanted to have a relationship with the land that you're from. And here in Hawaii, we know that too well. You know, where's your family from? Uh, those kind of questions, those always come up. Connection to others, to love and to be loved, to understand and be understood. Connection to the past and future. And this to us is also talks about culture, you know, that genealogical ties to all that you know and all that's familiar, and the connection to your better self, always trying to be, you know, better. So if you were to think about the story that you thought of when you were asked to think about the story when you felt healthy and well, there would probably be at least one of these connections. Sometimes the stories have all of these connections. And then we go a little bit further, connection to place. So when we're working with clients, you know, where do you call home? You know, what places are special? Do you have some place you go to when you're feeling really good? I don't know if any of you have ever felt like when you go away to visit some place and when you are coming home and that the airplane is coming over the islands and you see the lights or the beach, that just feeling of, I'm home. You know, that's a connection to place that we're talking about. Connection to others. So what is the story of the person you feel closest to? Do you have really good quality time with your family and friends? Do you have someone you can trust and turn to, or it's someone that trusts you and that you help them? Do you feel accepted by others? All of these connections to others are very, very important. And it's really what we base a lot of our work on, is making sure that we are all feeling that connection. Connection to past and future. What is the story of your ancestry? How do you feel that you're making your ancestors proud? You know, one of the kids programs that I run, we always are bringing your kupuna in when we're doing something, because we're telling them that they are representing their families, and so what they do, their kupuna can tell, they're watching them, and so they have to do their best to make their kupuna proud. And what do you do for future generations? We have a cultural birthing class. That's a whole another presentation if you guys ever want to hear about that at some time. But anyway, one of the things I tell the parents is that you hold the moms, you hold the eggs for all of your babies, and for the fathers, you hold the sperm, and that you will birth your children, who will birth your grandchildren, who will birth your great grandchildren, and so on. And so you hold within you all of your future generations. And so everything that you eat, everything that you say, they hear. All of your actions, they know about. And so we do the best we can, because we want to affect our future generations far, far, far into the future. And we are in charge of that. We hold them all inside of our body. And what is some of the other things? What is the happiest memory of someone who has passed on? Are we telling our stories? Are we passing down our culture and our tradition within our families? And then connection to better self. So what is the story of the last time you felt healthy? One of the interesting things when we were doing this research was that a lot of people were not telling stories of just, oh gosh, yes, the slides are supposed to be changing. I'm on like the 10th slide already.
Sorry, do I have to change it? I just noticed that too. Let me just double check. Are you able to see it changing now?
I'm seeing it, so that I'm in my slide presentation mode, so I'm seeing it changing. I didn't realize you guys weren't seeing all of these beautiful slides. I'm going to try one more time to share my screen. Okay. Is it back at the beginning?
At the beginning, yes.
Okay. I'm just gonna okay, do you see it changing now?
Yes, yes. It's
Okay, so this was the story about our going into the community, telling a story about feeling healthy and well. This was the slide that just shows the existing framework and what we found to be in a more indigenous thought when people thought about health. Um, and let's see, this is just talking about the framework, the different connections to place, others, past and future, to the better self. And then I just went through like all the stuff that you heard me talking about. So we had hired someone that really looked through all the stories, and these were the things. And so the reason that I'm starting out with this is that if you think about this as foundational to everything that we do, then how does this affect your work? You know, you can still measure, you know, blood glucose, or if you want to see the doctor before your third, month of pregnancy. But within that, you embed all of these connections, and that's how we build our programs. Is we make sure these connections are here. So I'm just going to kind of, that's the foundation of everything that we do in our program. And so I'm going to move on to how we actually responded to the pandemic when it hit. And there was a group that was formed called Hui Huaka. And it just was different people within our organizations coming together to find how are we best going to serve our community. And so Hui Huaka was formed, and using our resources, gifts, and creativity to increase resilience, connection, and health to meet urgent community needs, caring for our kupuna and elders, strengthening our food system, providing social support, connecting people with telehealth and public health information, and keeping people away from hospitals whenever possible. That was our goal. And you have to understand that, here in Kalihi, very early on, there was we were treated differently, I should say. At one point, I was driving up by Kalihi Valley Homes, and there was a reporter in her little red dress and a cameraman, and they were shooting towards Kalihi Valley Homes. And I think this was when one of the first cases was noticed in Kalihi. And I thought, they would never do that in Kailua or Kahala, because there was a positive case. Because it was in one of our housing projects, there was a cameraman out there trying to film into the housing. There was also, they were in our community once the rates were higher. They were in our community. They were ticketing our community members. I had several staff members that were stopped just walking from their car to the building and their mask wasn't fully on, that they were going to give them tickets to. And then actually when they started talking to them and they weren't what they were perceived, then they were like, oh, well, just put your mask on. And so we encountered a lot of that early on. So besides keeping our community safe and besides wanting to do the very best we can, we had to overcome these racism and trauma within our community that was happening. And so Hui Huaka really thought about the best way to do that for our whole community. We worked in the community, they did outreach, we got supplies together, we got them out. And then we got a lot, our community was so thankful, we did our own contact tracing, we did our own follow-up. If you were positive with COVID, we put together a food box for you that went to your family. If you had to go get medicine, somebody was called so you wouldn't have to leave your house and you would go get the medicine. So we did everything we could to keep our community safe. And I'm just going to show a video. Are you guys seeing a video with sound?
No, it's still the presentation. Let me see.
Shucks. Okay. I'm not sure what to do about this. It's not.
Or I think the video might be on the next slide as well in the presentation.
It's a different video.
Okay.
That's why it stuck this inside here. I can try the next one. It's almost the same.
Sandy, you could go to that URL and then share
Okay.
your screen.
Yeah, let me just open it.
Are you guys seeing this?
Yes.
We only see the slide with the video, but not playing.
Okay. Sorry, it's playing for me. I'm not sure what to do. We don't have to watch it. We can give you the link. It just shows our kind of global reaction to the it's playing for some of you. I'm sorry, I'm not the most technologically I don't know how to fix these things when I'm in the middle of something. So if you guys can just go on. I think just what I wanted to say is that we we didn't have dental patients, right? Because we weren't allowed to have people coming in. We did we decreased the amount of all kinds of patients. But anyway, people remobilized. And so we had someone in dental going out into the community to help deliver boxes, and we had some of the others, dental and other, chopping onions in our cafe, and it was like so much fun to be able to cross train. Everyone did what they needed to do and went to the departments that needed help so that we could do all of this. And they went out every Thursday. The deliveries went out, and so we had a lot of stuff going in. Mondays the food boxes went out. Thursdays was the kupuna lunch, the lunches. There were kupuna bags that went out. And we made sure that, first of all, we only buy from organic farmers. So this was all really healthy food. But we made sure also that we were including breadfruit and kalo and cassava and sweet potato and the cultural starches. And so every single kupuna bag that went out would have some type of cultural starch. It would have some type of green leafy vegetable, and then we would have papaya or oranges or something that was grown here. And we had so many stories. There was one family that just said, "Thank you so much. We opened our cupboards to feed our mother, and it was empty. We really didn't know what we were going to do, and you guys came at the perfect time." One of our favorite stories is as the van was going by, there was a homeless gentleman who was in his car, and they stopped to offer to see if he needed food. And he said nobody was filling out forms, and he said he could really use some help with these forms to go to see the doctor. And so even though that's, wasn't their job, in quotes, they stopped to help him, and he filled out the form. And a couple of weeks later, they were driving into one of the other housing projects, and he stopped them and he's like, "Do you guys remember me?" And they're like, "Yeah, what happened?" And he said, "Because of you folks, I was able to get all the forms filled and go to the doctor, and I passed my physical, and I now have a job and I'm working." And so you can never tell just those acts of kindness or responding to the community, what's going to happen for that. And so, that's what we're really proud of our staff for really being there for our community. And that a lot of times I'm speaking for myself as a dietitian, but a lot of times we can be really judgmental about what people eat. And we don't really know the trauma that comes along with it. For a lot of our community here, the Micronesian community, we have to remember that their waters, American bombed them, and so their food supply was really unhealthy. So the reliance on canned foods, because you can't eat the foods that are in your water, or drinking bottled water because your bottle, you have to remember these kind of things. And that goes for everybody in our community. It's not just about what we see them eating, but what's going on with them and what's happened in their life and what's happened, culturally and historically. And so what if we just were looking at eating healthy, the food that you used to eat back home, the food that fills your tummy, mind, soul, and spirit, and that was our definition of eating healthy. I mean, of course, we try to put out the best and healthiest food that we can, and feed that, but we really have to kind of suspend judgment when we're working with people, because nobody likes to be judged on what they're eating. So what we do is, we just feed the best and the healthiest that we can, and we hope that those are the flavors that they'll like, and they'll keep eating, and that we're working with the community to really build up all parts of the community. And so we want to do it with love and support. And so some of the things that we continue to do, so these are our elder meals, and peanut bed and just all kind of stuff. That pink that you see in there, that's a coleslaw we made with dragon fruit. We always had, like I said, kala or ulu or something on there. And then not only that, but our we just didn't have enough staff to do all of the food work we we're doing. So this is our elder program, and they came over every Wednesday afternoon to help us pre-prep all the food, and then they would come on Thursday mornings to help package it. And one of the things that we were able to buy in the bottom right-hand corner was this machine to package that we couldn't afford. And then we got CARES money to do all of this. And so now we could make these meals, package it. They could refrigerate or freeze if they wanted to. But again, everything except the rice and a few other things was grown locally here. And we felt that was really important, that we were feeding them good food, that they knew where it came from. We were taking all of the cultural foods that we could and the dishes that we could. We learned some of the foods from the elder seniors, and we made that, and they were really happy with it. And it was really nice also to be working with the senior crew to get these foods out on a daily basis. We also wanted to make sure that our staff was working so hard, and so we wanted to make sure that they were also getting produce. We besides putting produce out for sale several times. I think on Wednesdays we also were feeding them lunches every Friday. We got a grant to make staff lunches, and that we would feed. They still had to stand 6 feet apart, but while they were standing in line for it. And then if we had any extra produce, that we would also give that to them so that they could make their own meals at home. And what we found was when we ran out of funding for that, we got a lot of feedback from the staff and saying that it was so important to see everybody because they felt kind of isolated in their work, and we couldn't gather. We had to close down the cafe. We were doing takeout orders, but people used to come and eat lunch together and share food and share stories, and they weren't able to do that. And so they said that just for our program to make staff meals every Friday was something they really look forward to. So we found, thanks to the Consuelo Foundation, who is funding us now through September, we have continued to do staff lunches every single Friday because we want them to also eat healthy, and we want them to know that we care and that they're all important, and that we want to also offer just that small glimpse of being able to see each other throughout the workday. These are community food boxes that go out, and one of the, I've told this story so many times, some of you may have heard it, but early on in the work, we were on a call with several other organizations across the world. And I was listening to a gentleman from Canada, and he was talking about, when they first started their work, they were getting kind of leftover veggies, and putting them together, and nobody felt good about that. And some of that mindset of, well, people that need veggies in a time of need, that whatever we have, they should be thankful for, and they really wanted to put out good food. And then he talked about one of the people that was working with them, and she was telling him a story about being at church, and the pastor had said something like, I'm really looking forward to this weekend. My kids are going out to choose food for the food bank to make boxes. And this woman stood up and she said, there really is no dignity in your children choosing what my children are going to eat. And that really struck a chord with us. And we sat and we talked about it as a staff, because we wanted to make sure that, we were making food boxes, and we wanted to make sure that we were treating our patients and our clientele in Kalihi with as much dignity and compassion. And so, some of the things that we did to make sure, and if you look at the food box, again, we have our cultural starters. You'll see the ulu and uala inside there, but we also were able to do proteins, and so local eggs. We've got local beef from Kualoa. We have different fruits. We have honey. We went out with cornmeal from the raccoons. We really went out to try and find all of our local producers, not just veggies, but also the proteins and the value added for what we could afford to put inside the box. And then if you see on the top there, Kristen would write down where every single piece food came from in that box. Like it was grown by this farm that's located in over here, so people would know where their food came from, and whatever is in the box, we tried to make recipes. And so we put as much love as we could into this box and chose the best foods that we possibly could. But we also wanted to make sure that there was a connection when dropping off, and that we were making sure people were okay, and that we were asking them, you know, how they were. And this is this started during CARES, and we've had several grants, and Hawaii Good Food Alliance, through one of the grants they give out, Kohala Center, the Good Food Fund, we're still able to continue this, and we do it several times a week. And I'm looking at one of the sheets that came back, because we do ask those that pass it out to just notate anything that they want to notate from the people. We want to make sure that they're having conversations, and so keeping these data sheets helps. But just a couple of things that were said this past week when they were handed out was, you're serving more than food. It's comfort and hope during an uncertain time. Thank you for continuing to do what you do best. Another person said, you have no idea how much happiness you're delivering with this box. Thank you for keeping the goodness coming. And so those are the kind of stories we hear, you know, what's going on with the family, what kind of hardships, but also what kind of things they're celebrating. Our community likes to reciprocate, whether it's by giving a mask back or, you know, something they made. And so it's really, again, about those connections. The connections are so important, you know, to being better, to be healthier, to our next door neighbor. And so we make sure that, when we're doing food boxes, when we're doing kupuna bags, when we're doing lunches, that we are putting as much love and energy into this food that we can. And I have to tell you, you know, when I was in dietetic school at the University of Hawaii, I remember one of my classmates coming up to me and said, I just read something that said Hawaiians believe their food has mana. Like, how silly is that? And I'm thinking to myself, it's not silly at all, but I'm not going to tell you anything, because you obviously aren't thinking, you know, in a term. Food is so much more than just carbohydrates, protein, fats, minerals, and vitamins. Like, it carries the essence of who we are as people, no matter what nationality you come from, and that we need to celebrate that within our multicultural communities, and that make people be really proud of their food and where it comes from. Yeah, so these are our community boxes. And so this is just came from, you know, as these are being delivered, like I said, we had different people from our team on there, and it says, hey, you're my dentist. Thanks for the information, doc. And so our you know, it didn't matter what department, or, you know, whether you were a doctor or a community worker, like, we were all there to help our community and doing what we could for our community. And so it was like we were in a reboot. KKV staff has gotten out of being a cog in the machine, and now we're asking, what can I do? And the true essence of why KKV started, people are being reminded that we are descendants of those super aunties that went door to door. This is our genealogy. So that second slide where you saw those, you know, 4 women, and that was their job, to go into the community and find what the community needed. When we started our Roots program, we actually had lunch for the super aunties, and there was actually some uncles in there too, but these were people that had been with our program. You know, I think Nolita, our elder, she runs our elder program. She came in as an intern and then she was asked to start the elder program. And I think she had like 6 elders in the very beginning. And so what she did was she would go out and buy a whole chicken and then buy as much vegetables as she could and put it all in a pot, because that was the easiest way she could to feed everybody. And so she's still here today, and now she runs several programs with hundreds of seniors. Well, they can't meet now during COVID, but and then like Vailima was telling us when she started working and working, you know, in public housing, and just remembering times were hard sometimes. And she remembered opening the door one day to visit a family, and the grandparents were watching the children, and they were all like eating around one plate of SpaghettiOs that they had. They were all sharing that. And so we just, you know, for us, it's really important to remember that food is important, that people are important, their lives are important, who they are, where they come from is important, and that we need to understand this. And so what I started to say was when we started our program, we had the super aunties come to lunch. We made them a beautiful lunch once a month, and we would bring them together. There's about 10 to 12, 14, and sometimes one month some could make it, the other month the others couldn't. And we would tell them what we were doing, and we would ask for their feedback in the community. And so we did this for a good 1 to 2 years when we first started our Roots program, because we really wanted to make sure that we were doing the things that we needed to do and that we were following the path that we needed to follow. And I wanted to close with this video, and now I'm not sure, I don't know if there's any way, Cassandra, for you to help me. I'm going to try and start it, and you guys let me know what you can see.
Yeah, I can open it up if it's not working.
Can you see that? Okay, so that's the video that we did in response to the pandemic, and just all, so everybody that you saw there, I think except for Josie, are all KKV workers, and we wanted to just have something that felt good to the community, that they were all represented in. Okay, that's kind of the end of my presentation. I'm open to any questions, or actually, it doesn't even have to be a question. If you have a thought, or we can think about how really to serve our community better by really being compassionate and non-judgmental, and just trying to really support the best that we can, everybody wherever they're at. How do I take this off? Sorry, I don't know what to do.
Oh, same button, the square with the arrow, you can click on that.
Okay. Does anyone have questions, thoughts?
In the meantime, let me try share my screen, and then it will disappear. It will make that one disappear.
Okay, great. I know what to do.
Okay. Yeah, so
Okay.
that should be working. But yeah, just want to say thank you. Oh, my video. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I know you're super busy, so appreciate you doing that. And then it's great to learn like the framework based on indigenous practices, and then just seeing health as a whole. I think it's a good thing just to hear about it, just so everyone's kind of aware about how to think about health. And then it's also great to see the amazing work KKV is doing, especially during this pandemic. And then I think these stories can really help us like better understand what to do and what we can think about while building rapport with like the WIC participants and the community in general. And then just want to let everyone know, if you guys are interested in seeing her slides again, or the videos, or even like the questions that she had to help build connections with people, I would, if you can, take a look at the link that we send later today, because it will be up for the next like 30 days or so. But yeah, if you can put questions in the chat room, and then she can answer it now. I know Laura had a comment. She likes the term super auntie. I'll just read her comment. She likes the term super auntie. It's been really difficult for her as a WIC nutritionist not to feel somewhat robotic during these COVID times. And as she calls and serves clients over the phone, she's inspired by your presentation to let the warmth in her flow through the phone. And she would like that her clients would feel the warmth as well. And thank you for the presentation.
Sure, that's amazing. You know, that is so important. Like I said, Merlito, who runs our elder program, like on their own, they just started calling their clients, and people just wanted to know that, you know, someone was there for them and that someone was checking in. So that is, that's just something that I think is great to do, making sure that people know they're cared for. Yeah, we had to do a lot of that on our own. You know, even our the contact tracing or finding out where people were. And so what happened, I was meeting with someone from Food Basket. We were meeting with the Food Basket team, and they came in from the Big Island, and Mercy, who works from there, said she was staying with her family and that they came by and they were passing by the clinic, and she was like, because she hadn't been here before, and she said, oh, that's where I'm going to go to, I have a meeting there tomorrow. And then her family just said, you know what, the KKV took such good care of us, and they told her all of these stories. And so it was just feedback like that we get every once in a while that just makes us feel really good about the work, and that you know, we know that that it makes a difference to just really care about the people and to make sure that they feel connected to something, someone or anyone that you know, just gonna call and ask them how they are. We do just since nobody has questions, we still do take out food over here, and then all of the food that you saw in the boxes, we sell it at our food hub. It's open the same time as our, well, not this week, we're closed this week, but it's open the same time. And the thing is that we take SNAP. And so all of the ulu, kalo, and then they can actually buy things. We freeze poi, and we have fresh poi. We freeze cooked kalo. We freeze cooked breadfruit in chunks. We freeze cooked cassava in chunks. And these can all be bought with SNAP because we don't add anything to it. And that way, for people that want to use their cultural foods, you know, they can just buy it already cooked and frozen, and they can go home and to add it into stews and stuff. And right now, we were able to raise our limit on double bucks, and so we don't have an exact limit. I think this is going to run through September. But if you have clients that would like to come buy fresh, healthy produce that's grown on island, and that they can use their SNAP and double excuse me, double their money, then usually Tuesdays, and actually our food hub is open tomorrow, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11:30 to 1:30, they can come by to yeah, we want to be a WIC vendor. We're figuring that out, but we do have the EBT machine for now. Thank you. Yes, I do have time to take care of myself. I walk on the beach several days a week just to, me and my puppy, walk on the beach, jump in the water. That's kind of relaxation and making sure that I do find time to take care of myself. Okay. Thank you, though.
Okay, so yeah, feel free to put any more comments in the question or in the chat box. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for mentioning that they can use their SNAP if they do have SNAP. I would recommend just letting your participants know. A great alternative to the store as well. And then just some closing remarks. Just want to remind everyone, we'll be sending out the recording link in a little bit and also their certificates. So take a look at those. And then the conference recording will be available for 1 month. So if you do want to like watch it again, or if you had any questions regarding her slides, just take a look through them because it will be up for just 30 days. And then the handouts for the first presentation will also be on LA SharePoint, so take a look at that. And then also our next conference day is September 8th at 8:30 till 10:30, so just have that in your calendar. But yeah, thank you, Lani, for sharing. And
thanks, everybody.
Appreciate everyone for coming today. So. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
We will.